"We don't have time for this nonsense, ma'am. Step aside and let us do our job," the lead officer barked as he pushed past 52-year-old Patricia Williams at her own front door. The neighbors gathered on their porches, watching as 3 police cars surrounded the small house where the retired army medic lived alone. Patricia's weathered hands trembled slightly as she watched the officers ransack her living room, unaware that the faded bronze star with Valor device sat quietly in a dusty shoebox beneath her bed, waiting to tell the story of the night she saved 12 soldiers under enemy fire in Afghanistan. What happens next will leave you speechless. If stories like Patricia's matter to you, hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments. Have you ever witnessed someone being judged before their true story was known? Stay with us, because this veteran's story will change how you see everything. Patricia Williams had been living quietly on Maple Street for 3 years. The 52-year-old woman kept to herself, working part-time at the local grocery store and tending to her small garden. Most neighbors knew her as the polite lady, who always said good morning but never lingered for long conversations. That Tuesday morning started like any other until the police cars rolled up. Officer Martinez stepped out first, followed by 2 other officers. They had received a tip about suspicious activity at Patricia's address. Someone claimed they saw people coming and going at odd hours, carrying packages. The anonymous caller suggested drug dealing. Patricia opened her door wearing her old flannel robe, confused by the commotion outside. "Ma'am, we have a warrant to search these premises," Officer Martinez announced, not bothering with pleasantries. Patricia asked what this was about, her voice shaky with confusion. "Drug trafficking, ma'am." "We need you to step outside while we conduct our search. But officer, I think there's been a mistake." "I don't know anything about drugs," Patricia protested. "That's what they all say," Officer Chen muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. By now, a crowd had formed. Mrs. Johnson from next door stood on her porch with her arms crossed. The teenagers from down the street had stopped their basketball game to watch. Mr. Rodriguez was recording everything on his phone. "Look at her acting all innocent," someone whispered from the crowd. "I bet she's been dealing this whole time," another voice added. Patricia felt her cheeks burn with shame as more neighbors came outside to watch. These were people she greeted every day, people she had helped with their groceries when they struggled, people whose children she had given first aid to when they fell off their bikes. The officers pushed past her into the house, and Patricia followed helplessly behind them. Officer Martinez began tearing through her kitchen cabinets, dumping cereal boxes and canned goods onto the floor. Officer Chen started in the living room, flipping over cushions and checking behind picture frames. "Please be careful with that," Patricia said, as Officer Chen roughly handled the small framed photo of her parents. "Don't tell us how to do our job." "Lady," he snapped back. Outside, the crowd was getting bigger. Word had spread quickly through the neighborhood. People were taking photos and videos, sharing them on social media with captions about the drug bust happening on Maple Street. "I knew something was off about that woman," Mrs. Peterson told anyone who would listen. "She keeps strange hours, always. Going to the store at weird times. Yeah, and she never talks to anyone." "That's suspicious right there," added Mr. Kim. Patricia could hear every word through her thin walls. Each comment felt like a knife cutting deeper into her dignity. She had moved to this neighborhood hoping for peace after years of nightmares and sleepless nights. Now she was being treated like a criminal in front of everyone. The search continued. For over an hour, the officers found nothing in the kitchen, nothing in the living room, nothing in the bathroom. They moved to her bedroom, where Patricia watched them tear apart the space that had become her sanctuary. Officer Martinez pulled out dresser drawers, dumping clothes everywhere. Officer Chen checked under the mattress and behind the headboard. The third officer, Officer Webb, started going through her closet. "Nothing here either," Officer Martinez said with frustration. "Keep looking." "The tip was specific about this address," Officer Chen replied. Patricia stood in the doorway, watching her private space get destroyed. Her hands were still trembling, but now from anger as much as fear. She thought about speaking up, but every time she had tried, they had shut her down. The crowd outside was getting restless. Some people were calling for the officers to arrest her anyway. Others were making jokes about the situation. "Maybe she hid it really good," one teenager yelled out. "Check the garden." "That's where I would put it," another neighbor suggested. Patricia felt completely alone, surrounded by people who had already decided she was guilty. The weight of their judgment pressed down on her shoulders like the heavy gear she used to carry during her military service. Officer Webb was now searching through boxes under her bed. Most contained old bills and paperwork, but then he pulled out a dusty shoebox that Patricia had forgotten was there. "What's in here?" he demanded, shaking the box. "Just old things," Patricia said quietly. Officer Webb opened the box and immediately stopped. His expression changed completely. Inside was a bronze star with valor device still in its original presentation case. Next to it was a purple heart. Below those were commendation letters and photographs from Afghanistan. The room went completely quiet. Officer Webb lifted out the bronze star and read the inscription aloud. "For exceptionally valorous conduct in ground combat against the enemy, Staff Sergeant Patricia Williams demonstrated extraordinary heroism while serving as a combat medic with the 82nd Airborne Division." Officer Martinez and Officer Chen stopped their searching and came over to look. There were photographs in the box showing Patricia in military uniform, standing with her medical unit. One photo showed her treating wounded soldiers in a field hospital. Another showed her receiving her medals from a commanding officer. Officer Webb continued reading from the commendation letter. On the night of March 15th, Patricia Williams repeatedly exposed herself to enemy fire to reach and treat wounded soldiers. Despite being injured herself, she continued providing medical aid and successfully evacuated 12 critically wounded personnel to safety. The silence in the room was heavy. Outside, the crowd had grown quiet too, sensing that something had changed. "Ma'am," Officer Martinez said, his voice completely different now. "I'm sorry. We had no idea." Patricia looked at the three officers standing in her destroyed bedroom, holding her most precious possessions. The medals she had earned with her blood and courage were now evidence of who she really was. "You never asked," she said simply. Officer Chen started picking up the clothes he had thrown on the floor. His hands moved carefully now with respect he had not shown before. The crowd outside had heard enough to understand what had happened. The talking stopped. The phone cameras stopped recording. People began to slowly walk away, unable to meet each other's eyes. Mrs. Johnson was the first to approach the house. She knocked gently on the door. "Patricia, I'm so sorry. I had no idea you served our country." Patricia looked at her neighbor through the screen door. The same woman who had been watching with judgment just minutes before was now standing there, with tears in her eyes. "Most people don't," Patricia replied. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Mrs. Johnson asked. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "Because when I came home, people looked at me like I was damaged, like I was something to be afraid of. I just wanted to live in peace." The officers finished cleaning up as best they could. Officer Martinez approached Patricia as they prepared to leave. "Ma'am, we're going to file a report about this mistake, and I want you to know that we'll be speaking to whoever made that false tip." Patricia nodded but said nothing. After the police cars drove away, Patricia sat alone in her house. The silence felt different now, heavier. She looked at her medals lying on the bed and remembered the night she had earned that bronze star. She was 28 years old then, stationed at a forward operating base in Afghanistan. It was supposed to be a quiet night, but the enemy had other plans. Mortars started falling at 2 a.m. The first explosion hit the communications bunker. The second hit the barracks. Patricia had grabbed her medical bag and run toward the screaming without thinking. That's what medics do. They run toward danger when everyone else runs away. She found Staff Sergeant Rodriguez first, his leg nearly severed by shrapnel. She applied a tourniquet, while mortars continued to fall around them. Then she dragged him to cover behind a concrete barrier. Private Johnson was next, unconscious and bleeding from his head. Patricia checked his pulse and breathing, while bullets whistled overhead. She stabilized his neck and called for backup, but backup wasn't coming fast enough. The enemy had surrounded their position. Patricia realized she would have to get these wounded soldiers out herself, one by one. For the next 4 hours, she made trip after trip into the kill zone. Each time she grabbed another wounded soldier and dragged them to safety. Her own injuries from shrapnel didn't slow her down. The fear in her chest didn't stop her. 12 soldiers. She saved 12 soldiers that night. Now sitting in her quiet house on Maple Street, Patricia wondered if any of those soldiers she had saved were being judged by their neighbors. If any of them were being treated like criminals because someone made assumptions about who they were. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Patricia opened the door to find a small group of neighbors standing on her porch. Mrs. Johnson was there, along with Mr. Rodriguez and several others. "Patricia, we came to apologize," Mrs. Johnson said. "What happened today was wrong. We should have known you better before we made judgments." Mr. Rodriguez stepped forward. "My son is in the army. He's deployed right now. I can't imagine someone treating him the way we treated you today." Patricia looked at their faces. Some of these same people had been in the crowd earlier, watching her humiliation like entertainment. But now she saw something different in their eyes. Shame, regret, and maybe the beginning of understanding. "You don't have to apologize to me," Patricia said, "but maybe think twice before you decide someone is guilty just because police show up at their door." Over the following weeks, things changed on Maple Street. Neighbors who had never spoken to Patricia before began saying hello. Mrs. Johnson invited her over for coffee. Mr. Rodriguez asked if she would talk to his son's Boy Scout troop about military service. Patricia wasn't sure she was ready for all the attention. She had gotten used to being invisible. But slowly she began to realize that maybe being invisible wasn't the answer either. One evening, as she worked in her garden, a young man approached her fence. He was wearing a veteran's cap and walked with a slight limp. "Excuse me, ma'am. I heard about what happened here. I'm Marcus. I live over on Oak Street. I served 3 tours in Iraq." Patricia looked up from her tomato plants. "Nice to meet you, Marcus. I wanted to thank you for what you did over there. And I wanted to apologize for what happened here. Sometimes people don't understand what we've been through." Patricia wiped her hands on her gardening gloves. "Most people don't need to understand. They just need to remember that everyone has a story." Marcus nodded. "Would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? There's a few of us veterans in the area. We meet up sometimes just to talk." Patricia considered the invitation. For years, she had kept her military service private, locked away like the medals in that dusty shoebox. But maybe it was time to let people see who she really was. "I'd like that," she said. As Marcus walked away, Patricia looked at her house, the same house where she had been humiliated and judged just weeks before. But now it felt different. It still felt like home, but home with the possibility of community. That night, Patricia took her medals out of the shoebox and placed them on her dresser where she could see them. She had earned them through courage and sacrifice. They deserved better than to be hidden away in shame. The bronze star caught the light from her bedside lamp, its ribbon still bright after all these years. Patricia touched it gently and remembered the faces of those 12 soldiers she had saved. She wondered where they were now, if they were happy, if they felt appreciated for their service. Then she thought about all the other veterans living quietly in neighborhoods across the country. Veterans who kept their service private because they were tired of being misunderstood or judged. Veterans who just wanted to live in peace but found themselves invisible in their own communities. Maybe Patricia's story wasn't just about one day of humiliation and discovery. Maybe it was about all the times people make assumptions without knowing the whole truth. About the heroes living among us who never ask for recognition but deserve our respect. Patricia Williams had served her country with honor overseas. Now, she was learning to serve her community with courage at home, and sometimes that takes just as much bravery.